The University of Miami and Florida State University have been playing each other since 1951. For a long time, their games didn't matter. And both schools aimed the majority of their displeasure at some other team in Gainesville. Honestly, FSU and Miami had more in common than not. And then, seemingly overnight, things changed. And what had appeared to be a simple in-state rivalry was actually a volcano long dormant, ready to explode into something significantly beefier. This video is brought to you by your local Toyota dealers and the Toyota Tacoma. First off, I intend no insult to any fan base and therefore will likely hurt many feelings when I say the football programs at Miami and Florida State are incredibly similar. Hear me out. Both schools have flirted with joining the Southeastern Conference, taking turns wanting in and at times choosing to stay out. Both lived beneath a gator-shaped shadow and viewed the University of Florida as their true big bad. And in the 1970s, both programs faced the possibility of being dropped entirely. Finances mattered, but the real problem was simply not being good. Something even Florida shared at that point. Seeking stability, Florida State made the first move. In 1976, Bobby Bowden brought enough charm, familiarity, and ambition to reshape the program. His initial goal was obviously beat Florida, a box that he ticked in year 2, in what was the best season the program ever played. 2 years later, FSU finished 1 win shy of flawless. The turnaround was quicker than even Bobby believed possible. And yet, there they were. As FSU settled into the top 10, Miami made its move. Howard Schnellenberger arrived in 1979 and soon one-upped Bowden. Year 5, Miami won the whole thing. The first national title for any Florida school. We're only going to talk about AP poll from here on. This seemingly impossible makeover came thanks to the fact they had a coach who believed in their excellence, who took the team by the hand and led them to glory, and who then used that success to make one of the wildest moves in coaching history. Schnellenberger ran off to the USFL. He never coached a game for the team he was in charge of because they moved to Orlando before very quickly folding. And by the time Howard looked back at the college ranks, his seat had been filled by an incredibly nice head of hair that proved wildly important for our future beef. Jimmy Johnson took Schnellenberger's foundation and bolted a gold-plated jet engine onto it. His very first game, a win over number 1 Auburn. His teams played with swagger and destruction, fueling a heated rivalry with Notre Dame, but more importantly, pushing Miami deeper into its in-state battles. Traditionally, Florida football's pecking order was UF on top, with Miami and FSU trading 2A and 2B. But as the latter two climbed into the rankings, Florida got slapped with a 3-year postseason ban for a laundry list of violations. The Floridian throne suddenly sat empty at such a perfect moment. Miami had already seized the edge, but Bowden wouldn't go quietly. The stage was set for 1987. Which became not just the start of something extraordinary between these schools, but a turning point for the entire sport. Ever the promoter, Bobby Bowden saw FSU's Week 5 matchup with Miami as the Florida Championship, something that would tie straight into the national title. The top 5 showdown was the biggest game in FSU's history, partly thanks to the expectation that whoever won jumped to the top spot in the nation. The game looked like a great opportunity for everyone. 2 quality teams facing off with a whole lot on the line, but pleasantries coming from both sides. Fans, meanwhile, had already uncovered an additional layer of animus, but suppose they had to point it somewhere with Florida on the ropes. Now, too often, a game with this level of hype becomes a letdown, and through 40 minutes, it looked like that would be the case again. The Seminoles stormed out to a 19-3 lead, impressive enough that on the broadcast, Brent Musburger congratulated FSU in the 3rd quarter, saying that they clearly wanted it more. And then Steve Walsh connected with Melvin Bratton from 49 yards out. Then Walsh hit Michael Irvin from 26 yards out. Miami converted a pair of 2-point conversions to tie it up, and then Irvin got loose again for a 73-yard touchdown. 7-point lead, Miami. The football gods wouldn't allow FSU to completely collapse just yet. They clawed back with a touchdown of their own with about a minute to play, and that's when we got a beef-shaping decision. In 1987, college football didn't have overtime. So FSU had a very interesting choice. Kick the extra point and signal to the world that they're okay playing for the tie, or go for 2 and the win to try to cement their status as the best school in the state, if not the nation. Bowden went for it all. Miami denied him. After dominating the day, winning in nearly every way they could, FSU lost where it mattered most. The decision not to kick the extra point hung over Bowden and the Seminoles from there on out. Didn't matter that his team had his back or that Johnson said he would have made the same call. Bobby had to answer this question all year long. Even when Miami took home another national title at season's end, Bowden's decision not to kick stole focus, because that loss to Miami was Florida State's only blemish. While Miami celebrated, Florida State had front row seats as the nation's, and therefore the state's, second best team. What could have been became the off-season storyline. Maybe this was fueled by Bowden waffling here and there on the decision, maybe even more so when the Seminoles place kicker Derek Schmidt, who didn't get the chance to tie the game, finished the 1987 season as the NCAA's all-time leading scorer. While this discussion didn't directly question Miami deserving to be the national champion, it certainly didn't shut the door on that sort of conversation. And as August rolled around, boy, did that talk intensify. Not only were FSU and Miami scheduled to kick off the season against each other, but they'd do so with Florida State as the AP's top team. FSU's number 1 preseason ranking was a first for any Florida school. And with Miami all the way down at 8, August turned into a frenzy. Their matchup was described as a Cold War, each side looking to gain any advantage they could, knowing everything helped for the top 10 battle. This time the coaches played into the growing beef. Did Bowden think that Miami cheated? No, of course not. But he did compare them to his wife, who maybe cheats at cards. And Johnson was left looking over his shoulder, expecting his counterpart to pop up anywhere, trying to steal some secrets. An offseason can do interesting things to football-starved minds. The rankings seemed to relitigate the 1987 season. Florida State lost to Miami, and that meant maybe they were actually more impressive? Were people already that fatigued by Miami's greatness? For the Canes players, they couldn't have cared less. The typically talkative bunch kept quiet ahead of the season opener. Well, relatively quiet. If you can deliver a line like this, you've got to. Meanwhile, FSU players definitely read some of the articles about their very own greatness. They followed their coach's coded way of speech to hint at Miami being lucky. But they also admitted how much pressure came with being number 1. Any misstep and you're tumbling. People are looking up, expecting you to fall. And Bowden saw this as his program having a huge target on its back for the season. But before worrying about the entire year, Miami loomed large. FSU's coach didn't have an eye on revenge, though. He knew that that's how you get blown out. And he had his guys ready to go. Oh, shoot. Okay, maybe the revenge narrative might have helped. Now it was time for Miami to talk. After their beatdown of FSU, guys said they saw fear in the eyes of Florida State. The game was a cakewalk. Practice was harder for them. They said in years past, FSU brought an intensity that they just didn't have out there this time. They weren't ready. Bowden made no excuses. He had not prepared his team well enough, and maybe an offseason full of praise went to their heads. This game really affected the Seminole head coach. but in his depression, he could still deliver some bangers. For the second season in a row, FSU had just a single blemish on their record, each time via Miami, and both years at season's end when the final rankings came in, there both schools were. Miami at 2, Florida State at 3. Another year defined by what if, and another year where the national champion was undoubtedly impacted by Miami beating the Seminoles. The offseason after '88, though, at least saw the spotlight swing towards the Hurricanes. Jimmy Johnson left Miami for the pros. The incredibly talented squad that finished second in the nation now had a new chip on their shoulder and reason to prove Johnson foolish for leaving them. They likely recognized that folks in Tallahassee would see this as a door opening. FSU's chance to strike before new head coach Dennis Erickson could settle in. Unfortunately for FSU, they had to wait until week 9 to get their chance. By then, the Seminoles had dropped a pair of games and the Hurricanes had climbed up to second in the nation. But with far less to lose this year, FSU players had no reason to hold back. Gators, Schmaders, all my hatreds for Miami now. In 3 short years, college football in Florida had turned upside down. Players showcased grudges that seemed generational. The best example of this came from a pair of cousins on opposite sides of the matchup. FSU's Eric Hayes called Miami's Bernard Clark every day for 3 weeks, telling him to watch out. Clark escalated things, depicting an all-out war. It all felt so new, in such contrast to the days of, that's a great ball team over there, I tell you what. This was heated. And it stayed that way right up to kickoff. During the pregame ceremonies, referees could barely maintain order. Players were going after each other, or worse, going after mascots. Miami players wouldn't let FSU's Chief Osceola and his horse Renegade have a clear path for the school's flaming spear tradition. Not to be outdone, Tallahassee police had to detain Miami's mascot in full ibis gear. Sebastian had procured a fire extinguisher and planned on dousing that flaming spear, but blasted a cop with it instead before 5 officers pinned him against a fence, which fortunately happened close enough to Joe Rimkus Jr. of the Miami Herald to snap this photo. The disrespect carried on from the coin toss to after scoring plays. Everyone was getting involved, whether part of the play or not. And in this chaos, maybe thanks to this chaos, the underdog Seminoles finally did it. For the first time since 1984, they beat Miami. FSU's Tony Yeomans delivered the line of the day. But this was only one battle within a war which wasn't ending anytime soon. The Seminoles had clearly needed this. The win seemed transformative. They appreciated just how good Miami has been, which made this win all the sweeter. As for the war, well, there was no learning curve for Erickson in Miami. To be fair, Johnson left him with a solid start. While that 3-year stretch serves as a tiny window within a storied rivalry, the beef shared in this moment fizzled as quickly as it erupted. I think that's partly because despite FSU getting the monkey off their back, they needed a different focus in order to take the next step to win it all. Had Johnson stuck around long enough to lose to the Noles at the height of their power, maybe this thing would have lingered. But at the same time, we should be thankful for what came next. This rivalry not only defined the champions of the late 80s, the impact carried through the 90s, with the theme continuing of Florida State heartbreak. In 1990, Miami returned to their winning ways, which helped knock FSU out of title contention, and the teams again finished the year back-to-back in the rankings. In 1991, this time facing off as the nation's number 1 and number 2, Florida State missed a would-be game-winning field goal in the final seconds wide right. A year later, they did it again, wide right too. But Bowden and Erickson could now appreciate the big picture. No longer were these schools chasing identity. They were simply maintaining greatness. And what was good for one school was typically good for the other. Overshadowed by 3 years of war, this feud brought more concentrated success than maybe any beef we've seen. When the Seminoles earned their first true national title in 1993, it marked the 4th time in 7 years where one of these schools sat atop the AP poll at season's end. And for 6 of those years, both teams finished top 4 when the games were over. And that seems pretty good for 2 programs that just 20 years prior, people were questioning their existence. Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this beef. If you really enjoyed it, I think you might have a good time joining the ranks of our top secret agents, whose names you're seeing on screen right now. They're enjoying our stuff over on Patreon. I think you would like it too. Every Monday we drop something new over there, like this one that you just finished. And honestly, if none of that sounds good, but you're still listening to me for some reason, well, I don't know. Here's some other videos on YouTube that I bet you'll enjoy. We'll see you soon.